Welcome back to another week of Marketing Adventure with Jackie Walker. Last week, we talked about the fashion show history. So we're in this series of fashion show production. So we kicked it off with talking about the fashion show history. And this week, we're going to be talking about the types of fashion shows. So we're going to cover 3 categories of fashion shows and 2 markets that fashion shows serve. So let's get into the show and keep going with this series. Remember, this is an 11-part series, so you want to be here for each part. Today is part 2. So let's go. You're listening to Marketing Adventure, the hub for business, fashion, marketing, and other CTE educators who integrate marketing into the learning experience. I'm your host, Jackie Walker. Each week, I'll cover marketing education concepts, strategies, tips, trends, frameworks, and other information to equip you to connect your classroom to digital natives while cultivating an engaged learning environment. So come on into the room where your favorite beverage, snacks, and even your cell phone are all welcome. All right, so let's get into talking about the different types of fashion shows. Most of you probably don't even think about the various types of fashion shows when someone mentions a fashion show. You just think, hey, we're going to go to a fashion show. We're going to watch the models. We're going to see the clothes. We're going to, have a little fun, living our fashion lives here. But as a teacher of fashion marketing, you have to consider the type of show that you're going to do. And even out just in the industry, you have to think about the type of shows you're going to do. What show fits the market in which you're serving with the fashion, accessories, and all of that. So we're going to talk about the 3 different categories of fashion shows and the 2 markets. So let's start with the categories. The categories of fashion shows are traditional, informal, and theatrical production. So I'm going to go into each one of those. So when we talk about a traditional fashion show, we're just talking about a formal fashion show that has your parade of models. So remember, the history of the fashion show started with a parade of mannequins, and those were your models who were walking down just a simple straight runway, or it could have been a different style, but it just really started off with a walk up, walk back to present the fashion. So with a traditional or formal fashion show, we're talking about that same thing, just the parade. The models are going to come out, they're going to walk in some choreographed sequence, and then they're going to go back, exit the stage. Then another model comes in, walks down, walks back, exits the stage. It could be, there are different forms, just your basic forms that a stage could be in. It could just be in a straight line. Then it could be in a T. So that's a straight line. They get to the end, they walk to one side, they walk to the other side, they come back to the middle, and then they walk back. Or they could walk in a U, where they just parade around, enter the stage on one side, walk down to the end, cross over, come back, and exit. So that's your U. So there's a various basic styles of the runway that can be used with a traditional fashion show. The traditional fashion show could be for any market. It could be for your ready to wear. It could be for your haute couture. It could be for swimwear. It could be for any market of clothing. So it does not have to be a certain type of clothing that is demonstrated in a traditional or formal fashion show. Your models generally are trained, or even for just like your say small productions that may be a school production, or maybe a production for a department store in a mall. The models don't necessarily have to be trained professional models, but they can be models that you've just practiced with for a few times, or even the day of, and they can come in, walk the runway. It's simple enough to instruct them to walk down and walk back. So those are your types of models that are used for traditional and formal fashion shows. And then the types of clothing that's presented, like I said, it could be ready wear, it could be haute couture, but you're presenting, usually these are the designers and the manufacturers are the retailers putting on this type of fashion show. That's just kind of traditional, nothing spectacular. Of course, there may be a themed setting, but there's nothing spectacular about the runway. There's nothing spectacular about the choreograph sequence of the models walking or anything like that. Is just your basic straight fashion show. Very basic, traditional. All right. So that is your traditional fashion show. Now, the informal fashion show generally is for a smaller audience. There's not really a lot of cost associated with this fashion show because it's informal, which means it's not there's not a lot of planning that goes into it. The environment, the stage, maybe there isn't even a stage, because this could be something like a trunk show, or it could be something that is in an event where they just have models walking around during the event. So it's not a lot of planning that goes into it. There's little prep. And again, like I said, this is more like your trunk shows that you'll have. For instance, and what is a trunk show? A trunk show is when a designer brings their collection to a store. Let's say, and these generally are your higher end stores where they will bring their collection in, say like a bridal collection, and they will show it off to a select group of people, which tends to be like the VIP customers, some press, and people who are connected to that department store. So they just want to showcase their line, and it's just generally an introduction. And this trunk shows used to be the way that they did showcase their clothing. They used to put their clothing in a trunk and carry it around to different environments to showcase their designs, their collections, because this was before television, before internet, before we had all of the modern devices and things that we have now. The media was non-existent pretty much. So the designers had to carry their clothing around to various stores and to present them to their audiences, which, like I said, tended to be the VIPs, the customers that had good relationships with the stores, and the press meaning like the newspaper. Okay. And so they showed their clothing off in that way. And so that's an informal setting. You will still have trunk shows that go on nowadays. Like I said, they tend to be in high end stores. We now have pop-up shops that have replaced like the trunk show environment. And so those are informal because there's not a stage set up. There's not a whole bunch that is needed to prep for that. It's generally the designer or the manufacturer or the brand shows up. People come out, they view the clothing, they'll have models to walk around in some of the items, and then they can make purchases. And then the shop closes down and goes to its next location. It's usually with pop-up shops, they usually travel to various cities. Now, trunk shows, they may travel to various cities as well. But again, it's just the designer showing up with a collection of clothing and having a show. Not impromptu, almost impromptu, but not necessarily impromptu, because usually an invitation is sent out to their target market of people that they want to come to the show. All right. So, and it can be any type of clothing. It can be your ready to wear, your haute couture. Like I said, bridal does a lot of these kind of things. It could be swimwear. It could be anything. It's not limited to any type of market. All right, so we talked about traditional, formal, we talked about informal, and then the last category I want to touch on is the theatrical production type shows. And when you think about these, I want you to think about Victoria's Secret. I want you to, go back to that in your mind. If you've seen one of the Victoria's Secret fashion shows, if you haven't seen it, go and watch a Victoria's Secret fashion show on YouTube. Thinking back to the Victoria's Secret fashion show, um, there was music involved, live music, musical performances. They had about at least six segments of the show that represented different themes. There were backdrops to the show that changed with the settings, the lighting. You had the theatrical lighting, the colors and things changing. You had the props. You had all of these things going on. So it was more entertainment than just a fashion show. And the models were engaging with the audience with their looks and their gestures, and they're even engaging with the musical performers. So it was very much entertainment. And this all started back with Christian Dior. He had his models. He didn't want his models to come out and just walk and showcase the clothes. He wanted them to do provocative things, make gestures, kind of dance or act out things in a kind of a way. And it just brought to life the imagery of how the person who's wearing the clothes would be. And so there was more theatrics to his show. So when you're talking about a theatrical production for a fashion show, it's very much themed. They pretty much bring the stage to life to bring the audience into the setting. So you'll have, like I said, the backdrops will be theatrical. They will be lit up. They will have whatever if it's animals, it'll have animals in the background. I remember one of the Victoria's Secret's fashion shows was in New York, and it very much gave the essence of the city with the backgrounds and showing the skylines and various images that the city has. And so it just brings to life a setting. So you really feel like you're a part of that environment as an audience member. And with the models being more theatrical and engaging and provocative and moving and gesturing and making faces, then it really captures your attention and brings you into the show, gets you more engaged. So you'll have a lot of that. The components of a theatrical fashion show includes the lighting, it includes the setting, it includes choreography, dance, of course, music, and all of those things that help it come to life. Okay. It's meant to really have an impact on the audience. And it takes a lot of advanced prep and organization, of course, because you have to coordinate all of these things. And like I said, it's theme oriented and it's out the box creativity. So there's no limitations when you're talking about a theatrical performance. So of course they have to find the right location that can even have a stage setting to bring this to life, and then to have the audience that they'd like to have there. So you're really thinking about the stage environment. You're thinking about the setting. You want to have models who are very trained professional models who have stage presence as well as the body for the apparel. And it's a big theatrical production. It's like making a show, producing like a Grammys or anything like that. It's very much like that. So that's your theatrical production. And the reason why they have these, like I said, is it's meant for impact, to leave a lasting impression. And if you leave a lasting impression on your audience member, they're going to remember like the clothing items that were being displayed during that fashion show. They're going to remember the brand, the designer, and it's going to stick with them. And if it fits their personality, they're going to want to have those items. All right. So just recapping the categories of fashion shows, we have our traditional formal fashion show, which is just your basic walk down, walk back. It generally doesn't have a lot of cost associated with it. It may require a little advanced prep just to make sure you have all things in place. And it can be for any market of clothing. You have your informal, which is the least cost, less prep, don't have to have formal trained models, and it can be for any market as well. It'll be generally be like your trunk shows, your pop-up shops, things of that nature. And then you have your theatrical, which is going to be the most expensive, requires the most advanced planning, practice, training, high quality models who can not only walk the runway but act and be confident and doing what they're doing on the stage. And it can be for any market as well. It does not have to necessarily be like any avant-garde clothing, haute couture, anything like that. But that's where you will likely find the most avant-garde, haute couture, costume-like apparel on the runway. And again, this could be, is meant to have impact. Okay, so those are your three different categories of fashion shows. Now that we've discussed the categories of fashion shows, let's talk about the two markets that are the audience that the fashion shows are produced for. You have your industrial market, which is from business to business. So these fashion shows are geared towards retailers, the press, or other trade areas within the industry. And then you have your consumer market, which is generally manufacturer to consumer or retail to consumer. Or it could be designer to consumer. So it is those secondary areas of the secondary levels of the industry presenting the apparel to the consumer. So they want to showcase their items so that the consumer can say, hey, I want to buy that. All right, so let's get into talking about the industry. Fashion shows that are catered to the industry. There are a variety of shows out there. You have your haute couture shows, you have your ready to wear shows, you have trade shows, trade association shows, and press shows. So those are 5 different shows, and they're more, but these are the 5 that I'm going to talk about. So your haute couture shows are the ones that present high-end fashion. Now this is this is from your in the industry level, so it could be a designer presenting their haute couture line to high-end stores, so that the buyers can have a look at the fashion and make a decision about what they want to bring in-house. Or it could be that the designer is presenting these lines and they will be picked up by stylists for celebrities or for people who have high influence. So the haute couture shows are not as prevalent as the ready to wear because the market is more narrow. All right. Then you have your ready to wear shows, which every region with the fashion weeks have ready to wear shows. Your haute couture, you're going to find that in Milan. You may find some shows in Paris. The thing about the haute couture shows, like I said, they're limited in their market. So they're not at every regional fashion week. You don't find them in all of the different regions of the world where you have trade markets. They're specific to certain markets. The ready to wear you can find in any regional market. In any country that has a high fashion awareness, you can find those type of fashion shows there. Now, your trade shows are generally those shows that are held in your regional markets that are manufacturer or wholesaler to retailer. And they're showcasing like your bridge and contemporary fashions. Again, they're held at the regional markets, so like the Dallas market, the Miami market, all these different. United States has several markets within the country, and then of course you have your international markets. But the trade shows are held to showcase to buyers, and the buyers then turn around by certain number of units for all of their stores, if they're a chain store, national store, what have you. So those can be distributed out to those stores to be sold to the consumers. So your trade shows are business to business, and the businesses that are purchasing are buying for consumers. Okay, and then you have your trade associations. Now, your trade associations are focused on promoting their raw materials. You may have your primary level that's showcasing materials. That's the type of thing that they would do. So it's actually like the association. Your association for wool producers, those various associations that are within a particular trade of the fashion industry, you will see them promoting their goods at those shows. So you have your raw materials that are being showcased to manufacturers and designers because they want them to purchase their dry goods from them to in order to make the clothing that they did promote to the consumer. So you will have the primary level of the industry having fashion shows that showcase clothing made out of those raw materials so that the designers and the manufacturers can see how the fashion flows, how it can be constructed, the colors, the texture of the material, and all of those things. Then you have your press shows. Now, the press shows, as I told you previously in the history of the fashion shows, those are when the designers or the fashion show producers invite the press to maybe like a practice show, like a full out practice show where the press gets to view the merchandise ahead of time to see what's coming out so they can prepare their reviews, their commentary about what's coming. And this is used to produce hype around the fashion show that's coming up, the collections that's coming up, the designers that are coming up. So the press is given a sneak peek of a fashion collection or a designer or what have you. So that encompasses all of the industry fashion shows that I'm going to mention here. You have your haute couture, your ready to wear, your trade shows, your trade association shows, and your press shows. And then you have your consumer market, which is generally manufacturer to consumer or retail to consumer. Or it could be designer to consumer. So it is those secondary areas of the secondary levels of the industry presenting the apparel to the consumer. There are all types of shows that are done for the consumer. You have a lot of them that are, I'll just talk about the 5 different categories and I'll give you a little bit more information about them. You have your specialty market, which is pertains to like your special categories such as petites, talls, and product category, or it could be children. So you're looking at all of the different categories of clothing. So you have dresses, pants, leisure wear, athletic wear. You have all of these different types of clothing, and those are considered your specialty markets. Then you can move into your specialty interest shows. I don't know if you've ever been to like a hair show or like a cultural show. So these specialty interest shows really showcase even more specialized things. Like I said, there's a hair show. A lot of times those are done in conjunction with cosmetology students and design students, where they're showcasing the hairstyles that the cosmetology student or the salon has done and a designer outfit. Then you have your cultural shows, which are showcasing a particular culture's dress. And then you have other shows that are specifically focused on art, holidays, lifestyle. So it's a specialty interest that is not necessarily specific to a category of clothing, but it's more so, like I said, cultural, holiday art. Those are the kind of specialty interests that we're referring to that type of show. And those just are to bring to the forefront things that we don't see in our everyday that are talked about in fashion, but it's a highlight, so to speak. And then so we have our store shows. You will see those generally like at back to school time. So they'll have a show. They bring all the little kids on to showcase all the clothes that they have in that store that are specific to um, back to school wear. You have things that are like a new collection. A store may showcase a new collection of clothing. They may be doing a collaboration with influencers or designers or things of that nature. I remember when the Kardashians were doing a collaboration with Sears, and they had shows to showcase the clothing for that. So those are your new collections. And then a designer, when they come out with a new line, they may just want to showcase, especially if that brand is specific to a store, they may do a show to showcase their collection at that store. So those are your stores. And then we have cooperatives. This is when like a manufacturer connects with a designer and they put a fashion show on together. Or it could be a manufacturer with an industry, a trade industry association like Cotton. They could put a fashion show on together for the consumers to see. It could be a brand and a retailer, like I mentioned before with the back to school and the designers. It could be that they're putting a show on together to showcase this new clothing. But when you do a cooperative fashion show, it's like equal parts contribution money wise and time wise and effort. So they're working together to put this fashion show on. Alrighty. And then our last one is a sponsored fashion show. And these are like your corporate sponsors. So it can be any type of clothing, whoever's putting it on. It could be a store putting it on. It could be an organization putting the fashion show on. But it's sponsored by a group. And these are usually like corporate sponsors because they want to get their name out there. And the sponsor is funding the fashion show. It could be industry affiliates. So let's say that you are a designer and you are using a certain type of fabric. And so that fabric company could be the sponsor for your show. So because they want people to know about their fabric and they want to be known in their industry. So they may sponsor that show. It could be a charity. So maybe the charity is putting on an event and they have certain sponsors that are supporting them. And so the sponsors will pay for the show and help them bring the show to life to fundraise or do all the different things that a charity show may have in place. So those are your different type of consumer shows. And I didn't mention this one, so I'm going to go ahead and add this one in here. And this is productions that are done at the school level. And this is the type of production that we did. It was a fundraiser for our school program, so it could support our activities such as going to competition for DECA, our field trips, or different things of that nature. So you have your school and club type shows. Now, these shows don't tend to be for the purpose of selling anything, they are for the purpose of showcasing student work. Student work as far as the design is concerned, and student work as far as the fashion show production skills that most marketing classes put forth. Or if there's not a design class, they could just be showcasing retail clothing, clothing that they've put together from their closets or anything like that, just to have a fashion show to showcase their skills in production. And also, as I said before, to have fundraisers for their clubs and organizations. So that would actually be not a consumer show, that would just be a fundraising fashion show. All right. So those are your different types of markets that you have for fashion shows. And just to recap the whole types of fashion show, again, for your categories, you have your traditional formal, you have your informal, and you have your theatrical productions. And then for your markets, we're going to go ahead and say we have three. We have the industry market, we have the consumer market, and then we have the club school market for fundraisers. All right, so there you have it. These are your different types of fashion shows. I hope you've learned a lot, and I hope this is valuable for you and your students. I thank you for listening to Marketing Adventure, and I hope you have a wonderfully blessed day. I do hope that you find value with this fashion show production series. It's something I've wanted to do for years because fashion shows have so many moving parts. And of course, when you're managing students who are doing it as well, it really is a project management situation. So what I intend to do is have video series for fashion show production, along with documents that I used when I was overseeing the fashion show production, and even some snippets of when I was actually managing my students, and a highlight of the fashion shows that we actually did with pictures and video. So there's just a lot of things that I plan to release once I'm done with this whole series about fashion show production that I will make available to you. So stay tuned for that bundle of resources and information to be made available. I look forward to you having access to that. And I also look forward to hearing about your fashion show productions and seeing them on Instagram. So be sure to connect with me at Marketing Adventure on Instagram so that I can see all the wonderful work that you're doing with your fashion program. Thanks for listening to Marketing Adventure. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode with someone you think would benefit from the information shared here today. If you have any questions or want to connect with me, find me on Instagram at Marketing Adventure. All links and resources discussed in this episode can be found in the show notes at marketingadventure.com.